Hello, this is Pastor John from Journey of Life, continuing our Catechism class. This is the lesson on the seventh commandment, you shall not steal. And this will probably be as short as the sixth commandment was long, so do not fear. But first, we're going to review quickly law and gospel, right? Law is how we are supposed to think, speak, and act, what God made us for, how we're designed. And it sums up in two: love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And this kind of love is the what you choose to value and make a priority of. It's not the mushy kind of love. It's agape love, we say. So all these rules about how we're supposed to think, speak, and act that can be summed up in love God and love others, and yourself, of course. The rules function in three ways. A curb, they're written on the hearts of all mankind, and they curb our evil instincts because we have a sense of right and wrong, even if we don't always follow it. A mirror, they show us just how far away from God's design we really are, and that leads us to repentance, which pushes us into the arms of God's mercy, which is the gospel of what God has done for us in the person and work of Jesus Christ. By his death on the cross, he has reconciled us to himself. And of course, there's if you were in church on one particular day recently, I guess I should say I'm recording this on May 9th, 2017, we talked about different theories of atonement, which is different ways to look at what Jesus did on the cross. But the central thing is that he reconciled us. He's the bridge between God and man. And so he makes things right between us and God. And once we know that God is looking at us like a father who wants the very best for us, not just a judge or a policeman who's like tracking our good versus bad or whatever, then the law becomes a guide to God's heart and the best life. And we don't say what's the minimum we have to do. We're looking for God's direction for our lives. So that's where we get to the commandment. We're going to review the first. Oh, that slide needs to be changed. We're going to review the first six commandments quickly. The first table of the commandments, the three, have to do with our relationship with God. You shall have no other gods. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. And the second table is our relationship with the world, with other people and stuff and everything. Number 4 is honor your father and mother. Number 5 is you shall not murder. And number 6 is you shall not commit adultery. And on to now number 7. You shall not steal. And away we go to the Catechism. So, the seventh commandment, which is about God's gift of possessions. You shall not steal. What does this mean? There's our Lutheran question, right? What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not take our neighbor's money or possessions, but get them in any dishonest way, but help him to improve and protect his possessions and income. Again, it always stems from fear and love of God, and that fear is that healthy respect of the one who has rightful authority over us. And it has to do with our neighbors, which is anybody, we recall from a previous lesson, money or possessions, but in any dishonest way, but even help him to improve and protect his property and income. So, question number 59, what does God forbid in the seventh commandment? God forbids every kind of robbery, theft, and dishonest way of getting things. Pretty simple, and I think most of us grow up with pretty good feelers about what that actually is, even if we don't always follow them. Leviticus 19, verse 35, you shall do no wrong in judgment in measures of length or width or quantity. That's all about commerce. Don't move property lines. Don't use weights that are slightly underweighted when you're measuring the amount of stuff you're buying or whatever. Psalm 37, verse 21, the wicked borrows but does not pay back. The righteous is generous and gives. So that's kind of a lifestyle thing, right? That's like the wicked one is sort of gathering stuff unto himself or herself, and the righteous is the one who is looking for opportunities to be generous and to give. Ephesians 4, verse 28, This is to the Christians. Ephesians is in the New Testament. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. So even there, we see that the labor of our hands, meaning our work, whatever it is not even just about us. Of course, we do need to provide a living for our family and ourselves, but even our work is about having stuff, goods and money and everything to share with other people in need. 2 Thessalonians 3 verse 10. Here it says, if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. And what's going on here is the early Christian communities, many of them lived really kind of as a commune. They kind of had everything together. They put all their stuff into a big common purse, you would say. And whenever you do that, there's going to be some people who start to get lazy and take advantage of it. And Paul's writing to the Christians in Thessalonians to say, listen, the Christian church, we take care of each other, but it's not our job to feed the lazy people. If someone has stuff to do and the ability to do it and doesn't, then you really shouldn't be feeding him as part of your community. So that's something right there. So, question 60, what does God require of us in the seventh commandment? A, we should help our neighbor to improve and protect that person's possessions and income. Matthew 7, verse 12, Jesus quotes a universal principle, really, but it's also his. Whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. And then Philippians 2, verse 4, let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. So again, the idea of all of our stuff is not about us. We have this brings in the idea of stewardship, that our stuff is not really our stuff. It's all given to us for the time being, while we're on earth, to be used in God's service. So, in that, we look not only to fulfill our own needs, but also to take care of other people. And B, there, on the top of the right part of the page, we should help our neighbor in every need. Matthew 5, verse 42 says, give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. And I would suggest to you this, that some people are worried about giving because what if the person uses it wrong? Well, the way they use it is not your responsibility. Of course, if they say, give me money to go buy drugs, you don't give them money, right? But if in your judgment they look to be reasonably hungry or whatever, you could pray about it if you want. But I would say it's much better to get taken advantage of than to let your heart grow cold to those in need. That's what I'd say about dealing with requests. Now, that being said, we also live in a day and age, first it happened with mail, and now it's on the internet. It's just so easy for everybody to get at us with their requests that we start to have to be real intentional about what we believe God is calling us to do with our resources, instead of just like scattering them to the wind, like, because everybody can ask for money, right? When Jesus said this, he lived in a time when there was no mass communication at all. The only people who could ask from you were in front of you. They walked up to you, right, and asked. And I would, personally, I would have to be, I have not given people stuff before, but it has to be pretty self-evident that I should not be giving this person something before I'm willing to actually just say no. Because it's a big deal to look a person in need in the eye and say, no, I will not help you. I don't think that's very good for your spirit. So, the next verse, Hebrews 13, verse 16. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Even in the Old Testament, it said God doesn't need our bulls and our sacrifice or whatever. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart he doesn't despise. And it's about taking care of other people. This John said, You can't legitimately claim to love God whom you haven't seen if you don't love the people around you whom you have seen. 1 John 3, verse 17. Oh, I should read ahead because there it is. Or at least a verse that's right near the one I was thinking of. If anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? And then, of course, we've already had the parable of the Good Samaritan. And that's about it. Don't steal means not just don't take what doesn't belong to you, but help other people keep their stuff too. And I think that this idea of what legitimately belongs to us, not taking others and using our stuff appropriately, even applies to things like, well, cheating on a test. That could be considered lying, but it could also be considered stealing a grade, right? So it's really about operating with honesty and integrity in all things. The stealing and the lying commandment, which we're going to get to next, Commandment 8, kind of go together in that way. But for now, I am going to call that one done. And I told you it was going to be as short as the last one was long. So there is the end of the 7th commandment. You shall not steal. See you next time.